All right, thanks everybody for your patience. We do have a quorum and we are ready to get started. So welcome to the Shoreline Preservation.
Tenemos ya un quórum, así que vamos a comenzar. Bienvenidos a el Comité de Preservación de Shoreline.
All righty.
Excuse me, for the interpreter, you have
Yes.
not been assigned yet. Could you wait, please?
Okay,
You're coming over the
I'm sorry.
loudspeaker.
Thank you.
We'll call on you when we're ready. Thank you.
Okay, a little preview
Thank you.
there. We're calling the meeting to order. So first I will ask our clerk, Ms. Tessalero, to confirm that we have a quorum.
Thank you and good morning, Chair. Thank you and good morning, Chair. We do have a quorum for this meeting.
Thank you, Tessa. Now on to item 1, non-agenda public and member comments. Tessa, do we have any members of the public that wish to speak?
Excuse me, Chair, but could you please call on the interpreter first?
Yes, please, interpreter, speak to us.
Yes, good afternoon. This is an announcement from the interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are located. Click on the interpretation icon, the world, and select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app or on your cell phone, you can press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on the mute original audio next to be able to hear the original Spanish low in the background. Headsets are provided for interpretation. If you are in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist at the lobby. Aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, el globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish o español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etcétera, presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio, seleccionar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepción lista en el vestíbulo. Gracias.
All right, thank you very much for that. We are now on to non-agenda public and member comments. Or I'm sorry, is that where we are? Yes, we are. So Tessa, do we have any members of the public that wish to speak? And this would be for items not on the agenda. If you want to speak on something that's on the agenda, we'll get to you when that agenda item is called. Tessa?
Thank you, Chair. I have two in-person public commenters at this time. Steve Mashui, please come to the podium. You'll be followed by Dirk Akama.
Microphone on? Yes. Hi, good afternoon. I'm Steve Mashu from Save Oceanside Sand. Thank you for moving forward with the Regional Beach Sand Project 3, RBSP 3. This project is crucial for improving the short-term resilience of San Diego County beaches. We urge you to keep pushing it forward while also exploring ways to speed up the process. How can we work together to make this happen? We understand that projects like RBSP 3 often face delays due to lengthy permitting and funding processes. However, with the current shoreline erosion and sand loss, it's critical that the California Coastal Commission and other agencies streamline these procedures. SOS is asking SANDAG to advocate for this acceleration. We've already approached the Coastal Commission, but believe that a collaborative effect with SANDAG would be much more impactful. How can we collaborate to expedite these processes? We also strongly support the proposed 1 million cubic yards of sand for Oceanside in phase 1 of RBSP 3. Our beaches south of the pier are severely eroded, and there's no need for reef mitigation or shoreline habitat preservation studies in this area. We ask that you recommend this sand quantity for our city. We also acknowledge the work of the Oceanside Littoral Cell Regional Sediment Technical Task Force. Their efforts to understand sand transport in our littoral subcells are essential for RBSP3's success and exemplify the kind of collaboration we need. Finally, we appreciate your support for Rebeach, Oceanside's pilot project. The success of Rebeach project combined with RBSP3 will be pivotal in restoring and preserving Oceanside's beaches for the future. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and thank you for driving all the way down from Oceanside. Do we have any other speakers?
Took the SANDAG train.
Thank you. I do have two more speakers on non-agenda. Dirk Akema, please come to the podium. You'll be followed by the final speaker, Catherine Rhodes.
Say, I was wondering, is there some way that I can use a graphic and have a graphic displayed on the screen?
Let me ask the staff about that. Courtney,
Sorry, we can't
Tessa?
accommodate that. No. You would have had to submit that in advance as a graphic that we could have shown for you, or you would have brought it yourself to show on your own computer at this point.
Yeah, I don't, I just have some
and-
reproductions of it. Yeah.
I can take a copy of that and I can include it with the record for the meeting.
Sounds good. Okay, Dirk Akema, Oceanside, also a member of Save Oceanside Sand. I'm actually here on a different issue. Steve and I have collaborated with another friend of ours who happens to be a geotechnical engineer, works for a large infrastructure contracting company, Tudor Perini, who actually is the prime contractor on the California high-speed rail. He has suggested to us that the railroad in Del Mar can be reinforced there on the bluff without need to move the railroad to a different location, either through a tunnel or along the freeway. He suggests that, and this graphic that I've got, I'll give to you, shows a reinforced retaining wall that could be built on the beach that would allow the railroad or the railway easement to be widened from approximately 30 feet to about 45 feet. That would allow double tracking of the railroad. And at the same time, we could build a bike path with a walking trail along the beach with steps to the beach. I liken it as an improvement similar to what Carlsbad has on their beach from Pine Street to Tamarack, which is roughly about a mile long seawall. And that was built in the 1980s after the inception of the Coastal Commission. And that's really become a really major destination in Carlsbad. And I would expect that a similar bike path and walking trail in Del Mar along the bluffs could be a real public benefit, as well as providing a great reinforced safe alternative for the railway. So I will leave you guys some copies of this sketch that I've got. But I'm really directing the comments to SANDAG and to the City of Del Mar. And I think SANDAG at this point should reimagine their thoughts as far as tunneling underneath Del Mar to move the railroad. And they should devote some time and some money toward a feasibility study that would look at keeping the rails and just restoring the bluff with a reinforced retaining wall. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments and thank you too for coming all the way down from Oceanside. I think the rail issues are beyond the scope of this committee, but I think the SANDAG staff would welcome those and get them to the right place that does deal with that issue. Do we have more speakers?
Final speaker, Catherine Rhodes, please come to the podium.
Hello, Catherine Rhodes. And what I want to tell you about is my idea for the Tijuana River Valley. And the idea is to have it declared an EPA Superfund site. So 2 days ago, this EPA District 9 has a monthly virtual meeting that anybody could attend. And I noticed that you guys don't have the EPA as one of your people here. And they're going to be in charge of the biggest project in the area right now, which is the wastewater treatment plant at Otay Mesa. And so I would recommend that you actually have the EPA come to these meetings also, or to a SANDAG meeting and get them on the board. Because what you can do, if we had EPA Superfund status, what you first have to do is just go to this website called epa.gov/superfund. And then there's a process. So the first thing they do is a preliminary assessment site inspection, where they go and basically do a literature review and gather all the information from the Regional Water Quality Control Board, from the Air Resources Board. They build a library so everybody has access to it. Everything has to be completely and totally out in the open. Then after they do this, then they have to go through a rating system to see how many people are actually being hurt by this this contamination that's going out there. And so they make assessments on that, and then they do a ranking schedule, and then they put it onto the Federal Register, and then everybody could come in and comment on it. So anyway, it's a process that will do a few things for you. First, it will bring in hundreds of millions of dollars in new federal funding for a Superfund site for the Tijuana River Valley that could be spent on cleaning the area. Next, what it could do is it could force the governor to actually declare a state of emergency, or a California state of emergency for the Tijuana River Valley that he refuses to do, because we can't get a federal one until we get a state one. So he's basically blocking a federal state of emergency. And then this could just, basically push him to come here. So my solution is for somebody who knows Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, because he's a big EPA person and Trump wants to, get rid of the EPA, to invite him to come here and actually say, we're going to start the process to declare this a Superfund site. Just start the process. But I'm just doing it as a citizen. I would like somebody in SANDAG to actually call me back and see if we could actually get this done. And then, and the other thing is the 1,500 Border Patrol agents we don't have. Before I used to work on, I've worked on the International Port of Entry, the old one. There's so many new gates, but we don't have people to man the gates. We actually need Border Patrol agents to man the gates so we can reduce greenhouse
Catherine, your
gases.
time
Thank you.
expired. And that concludes the public. Oh, I do have one virtual public commenter when you're ready, Chair.
Okay, we're ready.
Tom Cook, please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi. This is a brief one. We just wanted to wish Chairman Warden the best with the next phase of his life and thank him for years of service in Southern California and San Diego County's coastlines. So thank you.
Thank you for saying that. That's very kind. For any of you that don't know, who may be surprised what's he talking about, I am resigning my position on the Del Mar City Council after 10 years of service. I had a TIA, transient ischemic attack, which was like a bullet whizzing past the head, that has convinced me it's time for me to end my public career. So this will be my last meeting for this group, and I'll have something more to say about that later. But I appreciate the comment. All right, at this point, do we have any member comments that want to make a comment about something? Yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem City of Imperial Beach, I just wanted to put forward, based on Catherine Rose's comments, that we had a touchstone moment this past week. On Tuesday, we celebrated, and I say that sarcastically, 1,000 consecutive days of having our beaches closed due to transboundary sewage. We obviously are also pushing and pulling at the governor's office to issue and declare a state of emergency, which we believe will sort of create a waterfall effect, and that we will have additional monies made available under the emergency circumstances to help push along the EPA's comprehensive solution, maybe add some wastewater reclamation in there as well. But again, unfortunately, 1,000 days, and our governor is still ignoring us. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Anybody else want to make a comment on something that's not on the agenda today? Yes, Joe.
I'm sorry, Chair, but I have to jump in. One of, I'm sure, many, many opportunities to thank you for your service on this board. I know I served with you on several of these outside appointments, and it has been an extraordinary experience. It's to learn of your extensive knowledge because of how many years you've given of yourself to public service. And I was one of those folks fortunate enough to actually get an email notifying of your intentions. And I was blown away by how many boards and commissions that you sit on. You've been an invaluable servant to this region, and I don't think we can thank you enough. So I'm going to take every opportunity in every public meeting to say something about it, but it's been a pleasure to work with you, and I wish you the best going forward.
Thank you, Joe. That means a lot to me. All right, anybody else have a public comment to make? If not, then we are on to the next item, which is item 2 on the agenda, approval of the March 7, 2024 meeting minutes. Tessa, do we have any public comments on this item?
I do not have any public comments on this item.
Do we have any member comments on the minutes? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve the minutes? It's a motion by Christy Becker. Is it a second?
McKay, second.
McKay is second.
Girl Beach.
Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anybody want to abstain?
I'll abstain.
1 abstention, 2 abstentions? 3 abstentions.
I need to abstain as well.
Okay, well, let me count again. So all abstainers, put your hand up, please. Let's make sure we get it. 1, 2, 3. All right, did you get all the names, Tessa? All right, great. And I think we can still approve the minutes even though we have abstentions that take us below a quorum, correct? All right, we'll consider them approved. All right, now on to item 3. Courtney Becker will present an overview of the draft Shoreline Protection Working Group fiscal year 2025 work plan. The SPGMA members are asked to provide any input on the draft 2025 work plan. And we're not going to take action on this today. This is an information item, right?
Correct, Chair. Thank you.
All right, Courtney, you're up.
So I'm going to keep it brief because I want to make sure we get into our big items today, which is going to be items 4 and 5. So every year, SANDAG staff is asked to create a work plan for the working groups on what topics will be discussed in the new fiscal year. This serves as our look ahead for the working group members, advisors, and members of the public for what they can expect to be discussed in the upcoming year. Typically, this has been brought to the Shoreline Preservation Working Group members in September of each year. And for this fiscal year 2025, I put together a comprehensive list with a tentative schedule for when the members can expect some of these topics to be discussed, including today's meeting. Please review items 3's work plan, which is also attachment 1, which gives a schedule. If you think that there are any topics or projects that are missing from the work plan, we can discuss that now, or please follow up with me after the meeting concludes, and I can make those changes promptly. If there's any significant changes to the work plan, I will make sure to redistribute the work plan with all the working group members here today. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on the work plan. Thank you.
I'm sorry, any questions on the work plan by members? I would just note this is sort of a disciplinary measure to hold us to the line that we can work on things that are on the work plan. And if something isn't on the work plan that a member wants to work on, there's just a process to go through to ask that it be added. All right, seeing no comments or questions, Tessa, do we have any public comment on the work plan?
There are no public comments on this item.
Oh, we have one at the podium.
I apologize. We do have one apparently in person, Catherine Rhodes.
Go ahead, Catherine.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, I think last month or maybe the month before, SANDAG had a request for people to talk about the Delmar train tracks. And one of the things, I'm not sure if I read it or not, but I did put it in my comments, is I very much hope that when you dig the tunnel, instead of taking the spoils from the tunnel and finding a place to dump it, you actually maybe dump it on Delmar Beach. Actually dump it in the literal cell. You know, I worked on all these big, huge development projects, and they moved. A lot of times I would say, why can't we just have this great, fresh material that would be the natural material that will be, you know, on the beach, onto the beach. And so as part of the Delmar Tunnel project, I do hope that you guys have the option of just getting rid of the spoils right there by the beach. It would reduce greenhouse gases, moving it all the time. We actually need a source of sand on the beach, and especially in the areas where they have the landslides they have over there in Del Mar. And so that's just one thing. And then, of course, I always want to throw out, every year I throw out my what I call my La Playa plan, named after my old beautiful neighborhood, La Playa in Point Loma. And what that is a full tidelands reclamation. And it's very similar to what I was just talking about with the tunnel. And you remember, that's what Elon Musk did before with the boring bricks. He got the spoils from the tunnel, from the boring bricks, and actually used them instead of throwing the dirt away and considering it a waste. He considered it an asset. And so that's what I wanted you guys to do, is actually consider these tunnel spoils an asset that we can have for ourselves that's free and natural. And so the La Playa plan, what that is a full tidelands reclamation. Examples of the La Playa plan is the Navy Broadway complex and NTC, where they built a big, huge bathtub foundation. So what happens is it future-proofs against sea level rise. So what happens is when you're on marshy land that we have all around San Diego Bay and Mission Bay, it's junk. It's horrible, horrible things to build on. It's unconsolidated mess. It's like quicksand. It's junk. And instead of, and you could build like a 1-2-story house, no big deal. But when you build tall buildings on it, more, you should actually go all the way down to the good formation of material and come back up. In fact, it used to be part of the Port Master Plan that you have to have 2 levels of basements under every project, because the liquefiable soils a lot of times are between like the 10 and 30-foot level. And if you have 2 levels, you get rid of it. You create your future proofing. It's such a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Keith, did you want to say something on this?
Yeah, just really shortly. So SANDAG has 4 policy documents on shoreline management, and you'll hear at your December 5th meeting about SANDAG's proposed to take those 4 documents, update them, and combine them into one document. So you'll hear more about that on December 5th. But just so we can help out on this issue here, SANDAG's policy is any kind of compatible sand that comes from any of its projects goes on the beach. So that's our existing sand policy that we have. It'll be in the future as well. And for the low sand project, any kind of sand coming out of that will also be put on the beach in the Del Mar area if it's compatible for sand for that beach area.
All right, thank you for clarifying that, Keith. All right, now we're on to item 4 on our agenda, the Regional Shoreline Monitoring Program 2023 Annual Report Update. Greg Heron from Coastal Frontiers Corporation will present an overview of the 2023 Regional Shoreline Monitoring Program results. Then Courtney will provide an update on the current Regional Shoreline Monitoring contract. With that, Greg, you're on.
Thanks, Dwight. I haven't been trained, so we'll see how this goes. So thanks. We're going to talk about the results of the most recent year of shoreline monitoring. So this is going to go through fall 2023. But I also have some more up-to-date information specifically at Solana Beach and Encinitas, where they just recently placed the nourishment material. Okay. All right. For those of you who are not familiar with the Shoreline Monitoring Program, we're coming up on 3 decades of monitoring for SANDAG, probably one of the longest programs in the country. We have 61 beach profile sites between Oceanside and the U.S.-Mexico border. 44 of those sites date back to fall 2000, which is just prior to Regional Beach San Juan. So those are really important sites for us, which we're going to be using today to make a lot of our conclusions. And so we're going to look today at findings by subreach, and the subreaches are listed on the map there, and they're mainly municipal, but also geographic boundaries. And then, as I mentioned, we'll look a little bit deeper at Encinitas and Solana Beach with some more updated information because the project just happened there. So we're going to go through this sort of like we did last year in this synopsis plate format. These plates are very similar to these, are in the annual report. So the intention is that each of you can find your reach of interest and quickly get an overview of the current condition and how you reach that condition. So this is the Oceanside subreach will work from north to south. And on the right-hand side is a map of all of the beach profile transects. And then there's a tabulation for mean sea level beach width, where we'll give you the beach width in fall 2023, the seasonal changes that happened over the last year, as well as the annual changes. And then the far right column is the post RBSB1 changes. So that's the net change between fall 2000 and fall 2023 in this case. So that's the period that encompasses regional beach sand 1, regional beach sand 2, and several opportunistic nourishment projects. Up on the upper left is a sort of the snapshot of net change at Oceanside looking along the shoreline. And red's going to indicate erosion, or green will be accretion. So here in Oceanside, we are all erosion over that 23-year period. And we can see at the bottom of the page some of the summary information, the average beach width change in Oceanside over the last 23 years, loss of 27 feet. And then finally, the time series plot in the lower left is showing mean sea level beach widths and shore zone volume changes relative to fall 2000, which is our baseline or pre-regional beach sand 1 condition, up through fall 2023. And so in this case, we see that Oceanside beach width increased following regional beach sand 2 when 21,000 cubic yards were placed on the beach. It stuck around for a couple years, but there's this trend of shoreline erosion. See if this works. Of shoreline erosion up until the next project, and then sand was placed on the beach and just kind of brought us back up to where we were at that point 12 years prior. That sand stuck around for a couple years. If you recalibrate yourself to this being the pre-regional beach sand 1 condition or 2 condition, but there's this trend of erosion. And when we look at that over the long-term period, losing about 2.2 feet per year despite this material being placed on the beach. One more piece, this isn't in the current report, but we're looking to add this. We've been using this Corps of Engineers SandSnap database program, which is essentially you put this coin on the beach, take a photo of it, coin provides scale, you upload it to the Corps of Engineers SandSnap site, and they have an algorithm that will estimate the grain size distribution there. So the idea is there'll be a link on that synopsis plot that would bring you to this information, and you can get a look at the grain size distribution. There are sometimes when it doesn't really give good results, but for the most part, it does pretty well. And so in this case at Oceanside, oops, wrong way. The median grain size, or D50, is a number that we use a lot in coastal engineering. It's about 0.29 millimeters. And when we do a beach nourishment project, we want to make sure the sand's compatible, as Keith just indicated. The D50 is one of those numbers we look at. And so for reference, the last regional beach sand project put sand that was a little bit coarser on the beach because we knew from the prior project that stuck around longer. I think that was about 0.5 or 0.55 millimeters. Okay, so I'm going to try to rip through these pretty quickly, and we can pick up some questions at the end. So this is the North Carlsbad Reach. This is one of the places that's done really well over the past 2 decades. So the top plot, you can see that net change of all green or gains over the last 23 years, and average, I keep pressing the wrong button, average beach width increase of 41 feet. You can see the gains after both projects, and more recently in this 14-year period, we can see a trend of erosion, but taken over the whole, it's fairly stable, gains of about almost a foot a year. South Carlsbad, we've talked about this site. It just doesn't seem to want to hold on to sand, despite having sand placed there for regional beach sand 1 and 2. You can see this long-term trend of shoreline erosion, about 2 feet a year. And if we look at the whole area, we've lost about 35 feet of beach width on average over the past 23 years. Encinitas, Luqadda Reach, this is from Bataquitas Lagoon down to Moonlight. In this case, they received sand for both RBSP 1 and 2. We held on to the gains for a short period after both projects, but there's this underlying trend of erosion of about 3 feet per year. And their average beach width change over that 23-year period is a loss of about 81 feet. So they just completed the Corps of Engineers project there. So let's take a quicker look at that. And this is going to bring it up to the spring 2024 survey. So this is beach widths in spring and fall fall beach widths are the solid dots, the spring are the hollow dots. So we see this pattern of seasonal fluctuation with wider beaches typically in the fall and narrower beaches at the end of a winter season. See the beach widths before RBSP1, after RBSP1, and after RBSP2. And then here we are in spring 2024 after the core project. Now, it doesn't look that impressive, but if you look back, I think it's the second highest spring beach width on record. And so I would expect that we're probably going to see the fall beach width up even higher when some of that sand returns naturally to the beach. And then if we look at the profiles, orange is post-regional beach sand 1, green post-regional beach sand 2, and then the dashed red is post-core project. So it kind of ended up in a condition similar to post-RBSP 2. Cardiff is another one of the reaches that's done really well over the past 2 decades. All the green up here, an average beach width increase of almost 70 feet. And you can see that the material's been held onto after each of the projects. After the San Elijo Lagoon nourishment was placed on the beach, we see this trend of erosion. And I think if we look at the grain size, it's a pretty fine material, and that's probably contributed to why sand has been moving out. Solana Beach, another success story. We've got one transect in this area that dates back to fall 2000. That's at Fletcher Cove. The average beach width change over that 23-year period, 109 feet. And similar to Cardiff, we can see that we've held on to the sand after each of these projects, but we do have these losses occurring now. Again, I think partly because it's fairly fine material. Okay, the Corps of Engineers project just placed 700,000 cubic yards on this beach. So we're looking at the same type of information we just looked at Encinitas at Moonlight. And so let's just go to the end. Look at where we are after 700,000 cubic yards placed on the beach, widest beach on record by a fair margin. And if we look at the profiles, again, we have post RBSP1 in orange, post RBSP2 in green, and then we can see where we are after this core project. So not only did they push the beach out, but to accommodate all that material, they raised the elevation of the back beach. Del Mar, kind of a little bit of a mixed bag here. If we look at it over the long term, we've lost an average of 21 feet of beach width. Material was placed on the beach as part of Regional Beach Sand 1, but not as part of Regional Beach Sand 2. I've left a line on here for reference. And so you can see we've held on to some material for a couple years right after Regional Beach Sand 1, but we have this trend of erosion afterwards. And then after Regional Beach Sand 2, even though the material wasn't placed on the beach directly, you can see that trend kind of flattens out or turns around, which suggests to me that some material from Solana Beach and maybe even Cardiff is working its way down in the longer period. Torrey Pines, a similar story, received material from Regional Beach Sand 1. It was very fine, 0.14 millimeters. And did not receive material from Regional Beach Sand 2. The first project did not last very long. That was studied pretty extensively by Scripps at the time. That's very well documented. We see the erosion rate after that project. And then kind of like Del Mar, it's kind of flattened out since that time, which again suggests I think some of that material placed at Cardiff, Solana, maybe even further up coast has made its way down the beach. And our last spot in the Oceanside cell, La Jolla, no material has been placed here as part of Regional Beach Sand 1 or 2, but it has remained fairly stable, negligible change in beach width and a flat trend, 0 feet per year. Okay, it's coming around the corner into the Mission Beach littoral cell. The average beach width change over here in the last 23 years is a gain of 10 feet. It's a pretty flat trend. We received material from Regional Beach Sand 1, not from Regional Beach Sand 2. And what I'm missing on this plot right now is there's a 450,000 cubic yards placed by the Corps here in 2010. So that's contributed to the relative stability in this region. Coronado's probably had some of the greatest beach width loss over the last several years. I mean, it recovered over the last year, but if we would have looked at this In 2022, we just saw we were down about 80 feet. Fortunately, the beach is about 700 feet wide, so there's plenty to accommodate that erosion. But there is a MSL beach width trend loss of 3.4 feet per year there. And our last reach, Imperial Beach, we received sand in Beach Sand 1 and 2, a much larger fill in Beach Sand 2, which account for how much larger the gains are here. But there's this underlying trend of erosion. But taken together with all that material placed, it's been fairly stable, and beaches are actually a little bit wider by 25 feet than they were 23 years ago when we started. So now I just kind of pull all of this together in sort of a stoplight type fashion. I put assigned green to the beaches. They're in good condition of beach widths wider than about 200 feet, narrower than 100 feet put in red, and then kind of in that neutral area between 100 and 200 feet in yellow. And then again, with the shoreline change trend or erosion or accretion rates greater than 2 feet per year, calling it eroding, kind of in that less than a foot a year, one way or the other, stable, and then greater than 1 foot a year as accreting or green. And you can kind of see how this comes out in a stoplight fashion. So we talked about Cardiff being in really good shape, Solana being in good shape, and South Carlsbad, for example, being one of the areas that just can't hold on to sand. And then so our last slide, this is some information we presented as part of the Oceanside Technical Task Force, where we move as we start to think about regional beach sand 3. What have we learned, and what are some of the things we should be thinking about? And so we're looking at each of the sub-reaches here, how long we had consecutive years of beach width gains after each of these projects. And then based on that information, well, what kind of renourishment interval should we be looking at here? So for Oceanside, we held on to material after each of those projects for about 4 years. So probably should be looking at about a 5-year renourishment interval if we're using comparable quantities. Other considerations there is probably a good place to consider sand retention, which of course the city of Oceanside is doing right now with their Re-Beach project. And so you can work your way down the list to find your area of interest and see what some of the thoughts are there. For Del Mar and Torrey Pines, where we only had material placed at Regional Beach Sand 1, I kind of feel like we need some more information there, but one takeaway is let's use coarser sand because we learned that from the other sites. And so this information is being brought forward as we start to think about Regional Beach Sand 3. So that's it. Any questions?
All right. Thank you very much, Greg, for a lot of important information. Let me just ask, is this available on the website if the public wants it or if members of the committee want it?
Yes, and it's also linked on the agenda here today. But before we move to comments and questions, I just wanted to give an update on the contract that we have for the monitoring program. So back at the March Shoreline Preservation Work Group meeting, I announced that the current contract was going to expire this upcoming July. But I'm happy to announce that as of July 24th, we executed a new contract continuing with Coastal Frontiers as the consultant. And Coastal Frontiers will be moving forward with the base shoreline monitoring program for the fall beach monitoring survey season.
Thank you, Corey. Courtney, Tessa, do we have any public speakers on this item?
I have one in-person commenter. Catherine Rhodes, please come to them.
Catherine, come on up.
Lovely, Catherine Rhodes. And it's so sad that you're not going to be here again. You're a wonderful chair.
Thank
I
you.
very much appreciate it. I think I came here last year, and basically all I kind of want to say is lovely report, love it. My only thing, of course, is that from La Jolla Cove all the way to Mission Bay, so the rest, most of La Jolla, Pacific Beach, Ocean Beach, Point Loma, there's only one location that's being looked at. And so I think you should have 3 locations along La Jolla, especially for sand retention. You know, I actually have the beautiful opportunity to walk down there all the time in the mornings with my dog, and all I see is slamming waves in that area. And I'm like, why don't they even think of those areas for sand retention? And so what I just wanted to recommend you do is see if if you could get some money from the city of San Diego to actually monitor in the city of San Diego, because it is their responsibility that that I don't think they're taking that seriously or willing to pay for, and they have money available to pay for it. So my recommendation for SANDAG or for the city of San Diego is you do at least 3 monitoring stations right around La Jolla, after La Jolla Cove, where there's a whole bunch of erosion. You do a few more in Pacific Beach. You do some in Ocean Beach. You do some in Point Loma. So we could have a better understanding of where there is failures going on right now, actual failures of the slope into the ocean. That are not being monitored. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Is there anybody else, Tessa?
And that concludes the public comments.
All right, thank you all. This is a chance for members' questions or comments. Dr. Flick.
Technology for us old guys. Could you go back one slide or two, whatever it is now, back to the red and green summary slide? I just have a quick comment. I love this. Is this the first time I don't remember seeing this before?
Last time as well.
Yeah, okay. Well, anyway. So besides the value of the actual numbers and the increases and decreases, what I think this slide points out very vividly is the complexity of the changes between Oceanside and Imperial Beach. So, but even in the Oceanside cell itself, from Oceanside to La Jolla, look at how complex it is. You have erosion, not erosion, accretion, not erosion. I don't think anybody before this program was put in place with this detail. And I'm speaking as a guy who's done hundreds of profiles, myself over the last 50 years in that same area and in Coronado. The complexity from place to place along our North County shoreline, is truly stunning.
I agree.
Thanks, thanks for continuing this work.
Well, that's SANDAG, and they should be commended for doing this for nearly 30 years, because that's how you learn these things. You don't learn it from 2 surveys or 5 years of surveys. And now you've got your group and Bill O'Reilly exploring why this is happening and looking at wave data in detail. And these 2 data sources really come together and play off each other well.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you brought that up. And I guess what I would recommend is a little closer, not collaboration as much. There's as much of that as is going to happen between the Scripps group, our group, doing the surveys, and you. But perhaps getting the results integrated a little bit when you come here to present it. I don't know how that would work, but I guess just a suggestion.
It's a good suggestion, Ron.
All right, thank you, Dr. Flick. Any other comments or questions? Yes.
City of Imperial Beach, thank you for the presentation. It is very detailed. I did have a question about on the next slide, which is your considerations, management considerations. There's a comment under Imperial Beach for quantity matters, and I was wondering if you could expound on that a little bit.
Well, it kind of goes back to, if we look at Regional Beach San Juan, the gains that you got from that versus Beach San 2, the gains that you got from that. So, I mean, and that's seems to have stuck around a fair bit longer, and it's pretty coarse sand, 0.53 millimeters, as opposed to a range of 0.24 to 0.52. So we see this at other places too, at Oceanside. I mean, it's not shocking. You put more sand down, it's going to last longer. So we've seen that at Imperial Beach, but we understand that there were some issues there with that, and I think Cindy's probably going to address some of that as the way we're looking at that for Regional Beach San 3.
All right, thank you very much.
Other questions or comments? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the detailed report. It's very informative. I had a couple of questions on Coronado. So you mentioned we had a note on there too for more info needed. Is that information you guys are digging up, or do you need anything from the city?
I put more information needed there because we haven't had a beach nourishment project to monitor and understand how it performs. That was sort of the nexus of that.
Okay.
But
fair
I
enough.
mean, you do have an underlying erosion rate, but you also have a 700-foot wide beach. So,
Right, yeah, and I wanted to kind of address that. So I think that's at one point. I think right now you measure at Center Beach.
right.
Thanks to SANDAG, I think we requested that we add our South Beach to the sampling because we can see a big impact on our South Beach. That has gotten really narrow. So that'll be new data, I know, for you guys. So yeah, although our beach looks very wide and we're certainly happy about that, we would ask you to take a hard look at South Beach.
No,
'Cause that's getting really, it's kind of scary, actually. Our big condos, the shores are right there on South Beach. And at the extreme high tides, I mean, the water is right up on the, almost at the ground level.
No, that's a great point, and I shouldn't have dismissed that as you have a wide beach when I do know that just down the coast you have that what we call coastal squeeze there south of Hotel Del.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah, I didn't mean this as a critique, but just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and as you pointed out, we didn't have any sand added during 1 and 2. But South Beach may be something we want to look at. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Other questions, comments? Yes, Eric.
Thank you, Greg. Always informative. Just had 2 quick questions. You mentioned that we try and match the sand grain to the current grain on the beach. Since we're engineering the beach anyway, do we ever kind of scale up the grain to make it stickier?
Yeah, that's a great point. So some of the lessons learned from the first project were size matters and grain size matters, right? So, the theory is if you match the grain size exactly, it's going to behave just like the native beach. If you put it on that's finer material, it's probably going to move away quicker and move further offshore. Coarser material is going to want to stay on the beach, the upper part of the beach longer, theoretically. And so that was one of the main focuses of regional beach sand too. I think the calling card was the right sand. And that's where we, I think the average grain size was about 0.5, 0.55 for that, whereas most of the beach's native grain size is 0.25, 0.35.
Okay.
So.
Okay. I'm just curious about that because a lot of our sand coming out of the harbor mouth is the finer grain sand. So yeah.
It's the same sand that was probably on the beach the year before.
Right. And then the second piece was just under the future sand considerations. I saw that the South Carlsbad and the Leucadia and Sanitas are at the less than 5-year mark, and we're at the 5-year mark. And I know it's kind of like right on the line there, but just noting that the erosion of Oceanside is in between those two, and just wondering if they should all be in the same exact area.
Yeah, certainly you can. I was kind of going with intervals of 5 years here, and just you're at about 4 years, and whereas the other two just less than that. Size matters too, right? So if RBSP3 goes from 250,000 cubic yards to 1 million cubic yards, that's going to make a big difference in that renourishment interval as well.
Certainly hope so. Thank you so much, Greg.
You're welcome.
Other questions or comments? Dr. Flick, round 2.
If we have time, I'd like to make a comment about Coronado. I think it may be lost to history, why the beach in Coronado is so wide, and also Mission Beach and southern parts of Pacific Beach. And that's nourishment. There were literally tens of millions of cubic yards placed on Silver Strand and Coronado, dredged out of San Diego Bay to make room for the Pacific Fleet after World War II, where they had all the ships were coming back from the Pacific. They had to put them somewhere. So I think it was 40 million cubic yards of sand. When I talk about a regional nourishment, a lot of that sand moved north. Silver Strand is still much wider than it was historically. I mean, there are pictures from the early 1900s where there are waves breaking over Silver Strand, ocean waves into San Diego Bay. So that doesn't happen anymore. But Coronado, and especially the wide part, the northern part of Coronado is much, much wider, many, many hundreds of feet wider than it would be naturally. And that's because sand moving north was stopped by Zuniga Jetty, which was built in the 1880s, I believe, to stabilize San Diego entrance, San Diego Bay entrance. And that retains all that sand all the way down, at least to the little small groin around the Hotel Del. But south of the Hotel Del, there's no sand retention. So this is just another example, of several good examples of large amounts of sand being placed with some form of retention at the same time, widening the beach beyond their natural, what their natural state would be. And Coronado is a perfect example of that. I think it's important to recognize that historical context. And if I may want to say something about monitoring Point La Jolla between the Cove and Pacific Beach, as the commenter earlier mentioned. That's essentially a cliff erosion problem, not a beach monitoring problem. It's a different technology and a different thing than Coastal Frontiers can do. But it's not a bad suggestion at all, because those cliffs are eroding. They're eroding more slowly because it's an older geological formation, which is why it's a point. It's eroded much slower than the north and south. That's why Point Soledad Mountain sticks up, because it's a much older geological, harder structure, but it still is eroding, but much more slowly. Okay.
Thank you very much for sharing that bit of history and knowledge with us, Ron. We really appreciate it. Greg, did you want to respond to that? You don't have to, but I'll give you a chance.
I agree with Ron. I just wanted to make one more comment on, I think SANDAG's future vision is to kind of try to get all of this information into a public-facing GIS web portal, so that, it might be plots like this or interface like this, but also ways for the public and other researchers to access the data and query information and explore these beach changes themselves. And I think Keith's brought that up recently at the last couple of meetings.
All right. Thank you, Greg. I did want to make a quick comment, and then I had a question for Greg before we move on. The comment is just a reminder that I think you all know how important this program is on a long-term basis. This is a very complex system, what's going on the shoreline and in the ocean, and we're looking to spend tens of millions of dollars to put sand on the beach, and we owe it to ourselves and our constituencies to know as much as we can about the system to make sure we're spending that money wisely. And this program that Greg has been doing for us for years is absolutely essential. And the work we did on the sediment task force has contributed to that. And if I just, my personal experience, compare what I know about this system now to what I knew 10 years ago when I started, it's night and day. It's really big. So, end of speech. And my one question is, an issue in North County has become entrainment into the lagoon mouths from the sand replenishment, and the lagoon managers, both in Peñasquitos and Santa Guido, are very worried about that. Are the studies you are doing addressing that at all or not?
So we're keeping track of the lagoon maintenance volumes and making sure that's all in one place where we can analyze. So, one thing you can do is, how much was being dredged out of the lagoon before we put sand on the beach and how much after. But that has problems because a lot of the times they dredge to the dollar amount rather than the need in the lagoon. So we recognize that that's still an area of concern legitimately. It's just, we don't have the tools right now to have definitive answers on those things. But I think there are ways to learn more about it.
Thank you, Rick. And I will just plant the seed with those of you as I ride off into the sunset. As we are more and more successful with sand replenishment with Rebeach and Oceanside and RBSP3, this is going to be an issue for lagoons up and down our shoreline, and we probably need to fold it into our work plans and get a handle on it. My amateur understanding is that if you have entrainment that closes a lagoon mouth, critical things start dying as quick as 6 days. And so monitoring programs that are monitoring it once a year or every 6 months may not be enough. Enough on that. And Greg, unless you wanted to respond.
No, it's an incredibly complex as complex as it is outside of the lagoons on the beach. And adding the lagoons and entrainment is that much more complicated because as things start to shoal in there, the tidal prism changes. It's complex.
All right, thank you. We are, yes, sure, absolutely.
Yes, the doctor, do you happen to know historically when that groin off the Hotel Del was built? Because I think that affects IB as well with their beach sand. If you don't know, that's fine. I can.
Well,
look it up.
I know the answer to the second part. I doubt it affects IB
Oh, okay.
at all. If I had to guess, it would be the 30s.
Okay.
But I can look that up. I wrote a paper about that about 40 years ago.
Thank you.
All right, last call for questions or comments on this agenda item. It's very important, as I mentioned, to how we spend our money, which leads us right to the next topic. And that is the last up is agenda item number 5, Regional Beach Sand Project 3, Phase 1 update. The project team will present the proposed sand volume quantities, footprints, and preliminary results from the economic analysis for RBSP3 for each coastal jurisdiction. Our Shoreline Working Group members are asked to provide any feedback and recommendations for the project team to proceed with this project. The project team here today includes Cindy Kincaid, Dave Shug, Chris Webb, and Dr. Phil King. Dr. King will be joining us all virtually with thank you. You all can begin. You're on.
All right. Chris, will you hand the slide? And, oh, good, Phil is on. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming. Today, we're going to give you a status on the feasibility study phase for the Regional Beach Sand Project 3 efforts that we've all been talking about over the last more than a year. For those of you who are familiar with the previous regional beach sand efforts, the team should look pretty familiar. Cindy Kincaid and Dave Shug from AECOM, Chris Webb from Moffitt Nickel, Greg Heron from Coastal Frontiers, Dr. Phil King from, well, it's economics, doing the economics on the study. And then also we have Merkel and Associates on the team. So today we're just going to give a brief update on what the status is for the feasibility study phase. We're going to give you a background on the regional beach sand project efforts from 1 and 2, and then talk about what our approach is moving forward. That's going to include showing some of the preliminary footprints that we've been working through with each of the different jurisdictions, as well as some of the differences with this approach, which is in investigating some programmatic strategies and some retention opportunities. And then Dr. King is going to give a background on the results of the economic analysis preliminarily, and we'll talk a little bit also about the offshore borough sites that we've been looking into. So with that, I'm going to hand it to Chris.
Thank you, Cindy. Hello. So there has been action in the past that I know you're aware of. We've got 2 regional beach sand projects that are under the belt of SANDAG. The first one was done in 2001, and it included about 2.1 million cubic yards of sand total placed within the region, spread amongst 12 different beaches. There was one in every city with the exception, I think, of Coronado. And then the second regional beach sand project was built in 2012, and it was a smaller project, about 1.5 million cubic yards of sand placed at 8 beaches total. And several cities dropped out because the economic climate was a little more challenging at that time. I think San Diego, Del Mar, and Coronado probably didn't participate. So those 2 projects proved a lot. They proved that there can be nourishment of the beaches. It's technically feasible to do it. It can be done without causing permanent and significant environmental impacts that require mitigation. So that was a hit. And in our experience, it was very valuable to understand that. Plus, they serve as the basis for monitoring data and also to help us with our, thank you, with understanding environmental data. So with that, now we're in RBSP3, and RBSP3 it's the onset of RBSP3, the conceptual feasibility stage of what to do with RBSP3. So we're here today to show you some probable or possible proposed footprints of sand placement throughout each city to help you understand what could be the economics if this kind of project were built. It's the benefits in dollars versus the costs in dollars. So what we're looking at is does it generate revenue by investing in the shoreline and building these projects? Thus far, the answer is yes. And Dr. King's here to help us understand what this specific action that we're going to talk to you about would do economically. We're also going to talk about how to, in this feasibility study, which we're not going to talk about today specifically, though, is how to turn this beach nourishment activity into a programmatic thing where it can happen on a program every few years where there's funding lined up and the projects can be anticipated and pretty much confident they'll go ahead. Maybe to consider sand retention measures throughout the region in certain places. Mr. Heron just showed us where places that don't hold sand are, in my opinion, candidates for considering retention. There's lessons learned from the other projects that we can bring forth for RBSP3 as well. And there's borrow sites and sand sources that we could look at to expand our supply. So with that, I'm going to walk through, I think, about 14 different beach fill footprints proposed in different locations and different quantities. So I'll buzz through them because it could take a while if I linger too long. But let's start in the north at Oceanside and we'll head south to Imperial Beach. And then we'll leapfrog back up to Orange County, which is where I live. And there's three or four places in Orange County, which I'm tickled to present. So the first site is Oceanside. And so at Oceanside, what we've talked to each city, we understand what each city wants, and we've kind of evaluated what was done in the past and try to understand how it could be optimized and improved. And Oceanside wanted a large quantity. So 1 million cubic yards is proposed right now for that concept at Oceanside. And it's in a footprint location that is slightly north from the previous 2 projects done by SANDAG. And the effort is to try to attract better economic return by moving it closer to the pier for some of the public access and amenities that are there. It's not quite a mile long, but it's a significant project. And I'm going to move now to Carlsbad. So Carlsbad's the next city south, of course, and there's several places within Carlsbad that are proposed for nourishment. One is North Carlsbad. North Carlsbad's received sand both times from the regional beach sand projects, and the quantity proposed in this particular concept is the same as was placed in those 2 projects, 240,000 cubic yards. The footprint is nearly identical, except the south end has been stretched a little bit further south to be near, to end at Pine Avenue, which is where there's a park 1 block inland. And the thinking is maybe being near a park could attract some more people down to the beach. So it's a solid footprint with a significant project. It extends all the way north to Buena Vista Lagoon. The next site in Carlsbad is called South Carlsbad North. It's kind of an interesting name, I know, but in South Carlsbad, we split that beach into South Carlsbad North and South relative to the campground location and relative to the Encinas Creek mouth. So this is a site that was nourished twice by SANDAG. There wasn't a lot of longevity of the beach fill, but the consideration now is to make this longer and make this bigger. Make this a 300,000 cubic yard project rather than the prior 150,000 cubic yard projects, and extend the north end up toward Palomar Airport Road and keep the south end right about near Encinas Creek mouth. Heading further south now, we're going to go into Encinitas, and there's, I think, 4 sites within Encinitas. At the north end of Encinitas is the beach we call Bataquitos Beach. And this beach fill footprint has been used twice by SANDAG. This is proposing to do the same thing with 118,000 cubic yards of nourishment, with the option of potentially sliding this footprint to the south toward the Grandview access point if the city of Encinitas has interest in doing that. Another project within Encinitas is called the Luqadda Beach Fill Footprint, and Luqadda was constructed for Regional Beach Sand 1. It's 132,000 cubic yards, and this footprint has been shifted slightly to the south to have the end of it closer to Grandview Avenue and right in front of Beacons. So this is a similar project to a prior one that was built just a little bit further south. And then we go to Moonlight Beach, and Moonlight Beach is a relatively short fill. It's only about 750 feet long, but it's about 105 cubic yards. It was built twice by SANDAG. The beach performed well. It's an attraction to the community. The city, however, would like to reserve the right to potentially slide its footprint a little bit to the north if it seems more suitable during at the time of construction, or slide it to the south toward D Street and E Street. So there's some flexibility in these footprints, in this footprint, excuse me. And then finally in Encinitas, the southernmost footprint is at Cardiff Beach. And it's a footprint that's larger than the prior SANDAG footprints. This one would be a 300,000 cubic yard project, where the prior projects were more like 100,000 cubic yards. So this is about 3 times as large. It's the same quantity that was placed as part of the San Alejo Lagoon Restoration Project in 2018. Similar footprint. It extends from the last restaurant to the south, toward the south, and reaches about midway along the beach down towards South Cardiff State Beach. And then we're going to go into Solana Beach now. And Solana Beach is a footprint that is a lot longer than the prior ones. SANDAG nourished from Fletcher Cove toward Dahlia Street twice in the past with quantities of 150,000 cubic yards. So this one is double that. This is a 300,000 cubic yard project that extends from Tide Park south of Dahlia. So it's similar to the Army Corps of Engineers footprint, just a smaller quantity. It's probably a lot like their renourishment quantity. Then we head to Del Mar. Del Mar received sand during RBSP 1. And this is the same quantity, 183,000 cubic yards, and it's proposed to extend from the San Diego River to Powerhouse Park. This is slightly north from where it was placed in 2001. It didn't quite extend all the way to the river mouth, so this is covering all properties along the shorefront. And now we get into the city of San Diego. So the city of San Diego has several footprints. The northernmost one is along Torrey Pine State Beach. This was built in Regional Beach Sand 1. This is identical to the footprint that was installed, a 245,000 cubic yard volume, adjacent to the parking lot for the State Beach. The other 2 project sites within the city of San Diego are at Pacific Beach. We call this Tourmaline, excuse me, from near Pacific Beach Point down to Diamond Street. It's approximately a 300,000 cubic yard footprint. It's not been built before, so it would include some additional work to develop the concept and assess the biology and things like that. So it's an added site to the project. The site that was built before in 2001 is at Mission Beach. This footprint, however, is about 3 times as large as the one that was built in 2001. That was a 150,000 cubic yard project, I think. This is a 450,000 cubic yard project placed right in front of Hamels and extending to the north. It's a longer footprint. It's a bigger quantity. It's a bigger project, of course. And then heading to Coronado and hearing what the Coronado folks have said, right in front of the shores, there's a project anticipated that's a 200,000 cubic yard footprint that's over 2,000 feet long, extending from the groin in front of the Hotel Del down to Avenida Lunar. So it's basically South Coronado. And nearby on the bay side of Coronado is anticipated for a project to occur potentially at Glorieta Bay, where 10,000 cubic yards of sand could be placed along this beach. Getting it there is kind of tricky. We're thinking about potentially having it transferred from the Coronado Shores Beach across the street using trucks or other vehicles, as opposed to swinging a dredge around into San Diego Bay, but that's to be determined. And then the farthest south candidate is Imperial Beach, and Imperial Beach receives sand in both Regional Beach Sand 1 and Regional Beach Sand 2. The quantity being proposed here is on the beach is 150,000 cubic yards. I'm sorry, 120,000 cubic yards, the same that was placed in Regional Beach Sand 1. It extends from very close to the pier down toward the south end of the city. This footprint has been slid to the north to get it closer to the pier to make it more economically viable or economically attractive. And then there's a nearshore placement box shown for Imperial Beach right off the pier to the south, which would hold up to maybe 300,000 cubic yards of sand. That's just because that was done before by the city, by the port. And we understand that was fair, and the Corps, I think, and it was fairly successful. And it's intended to be a nearshore feeder of sand to the beach without necessarily being up on the beach, and maybe even provide a surfing amenity temporarily. That always enters some folks' heads around here. So let's go to Orange County now. So in Orange County, we've got several sites. We've got one in Dana Point shown right here. This is Doheny Beach. This extends from the San Juan Creek mouth on the left all the way over through Capistrano Beach, which is an Orange County beach, all the way to a residential neighborhood. called Capistrano Bay District, and this footprint is a 500,000 cubic yard beach fill. It is not trivial. It would benefit this site a lot. They're receiving sand from the Santa Ana River by truck right now, so it receives sand already in an existing state. Then in San Clemente, there's 3 different footprints that I'll show. The first one is at the north end of town called North Beach. And this is a beach that's close to a lot of different amenities, including a train station, a parking lot, a concession stand, volleyball courts, tot lot, et cetera. It extends southward from the edge of a manufactured home community toward a public access way called El Portal. And it is 250,000 cubic yards. It's a pretty significant footprint. It's received sand before from the Santa Ana River by truck and is receiving some, I think, right now. City staff could brief us on that. They're in the room. And then farther south in San Clemente, toward the south end of town, we've looked at where sand could be placed, which could generate a lot of economic benefit and yet feed the city. So we've looked at a public access way at the foot of Calafia State Beach at the south end of this fill, and then a northern access point near Trafalgar Street, which is the northern access point for this fill is pretty much the south end of the Army Corps of Engineers placement footprint. So what we're doing is we're placing sand just south of where the Army Corps of Engineers is planning on placing more sand. And this is a 500,000 cubic yard fill. This is not trivial. This is a significant one. It would work well with the Corps of Engineers project, but if the Corps of Engineers doesn't come back anytime soon and stick with their nourishment frequency, the city might pick up, so we've added in red a footprint that assumes or takes over the Army Corps of Engineers footprint with another 300,000 cubic yard quantity, which would make this fill 8,000 feet long and 800,000 cubic yards. So it would be the biggest, it'd be the longest one in this set, but it wouldn't be the largest quantity. Pretty significant stuff. So with that, I'll leave the topic of beach fill footprints and just go into the next subject that we're going to talk about next time that we speak. And that's got to do with sand retention ideas, where sand retention should go, what kind of concepts should be considered. Should it be at Oceanside? Should it be at Carlsbad Beach, South Beach North, South Carlsbad North? Should it be at Lucadia? Should it be at Coronado? Where else should it be? And we'll be happy to entertain the input of anybody, of course, as part of that discussion. And with that, now I'm going to hand it over to Phil King, and I can't give you the flipper, Phil. You've got your own, I guess, wherever you are.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. I've had some technical glitches with the internet, so hopefully cross your fingers. I don't have a clicker, but I only have 2 slides, so you'll just have to bear with me. So the methodology used in this approach is the same method that I've used elsewhere in California, for example, Hermosa Beach, Manhattan Beach, and currently at Stinson Beach. I applied a day use value of $62 a day based on numerous studies of Southern California beaches. This model also applies the concept of carrying capacity, first developed by the Corps of Engineers and the U.S. Forest Service in the 1950s. Their modeling is consistent with towel space of 100 square feet, which is 9.3 square meters for those of you who are metric. I resisted these models, frankly, as some of you know, for many years, but I've come to embrace the concept of carrying capacity, especially as we lose beaches and beach width over time. And we know that our loss of beaches is going to increase over time. So the 100 square foot rule is also generally consistent with guidelines developed for COVID and other infectious diseases. So we assume a turnover of 3 people per day, which is again consistent with previous studies, including mine. The model assumes that when a beach exceeds its carrying capacity, there is a loss of what we call in economics non-market value, which is basically how much people are willing to pay for a day at the beach. We use daily attendance data provided by area beaches to determine the number of days where the beaches were over capacity. And I want to thank Courtney and Candace in particular for being really helpful in getting this data. Next slide, please. Next slide, thank you. These are the preliminary, I emphasize preliminary benefit cost analyses. But what I want to, and they will be developed in more detail in a over 30-page appendix, which I'm sure all of you will read very carefully when it comes out. But first thing to notice is the numbers are incredibly large. When I look at these results, I think of what the astronomer Carl Sagan, who used to say billions and billions when he was talking about stars in the galaxy. Well, if you look at the results for the SANDAG beaches, it's billions and billions. You can see it's 2 billion if you don't apply any discount rate at all, but it's 1.7 with a 3% discount rate and 1.4 with a 7% discount rate. And this is over a 10-year cycle period. I know Greg mentioned different nourishment cycles for different beaches, but we kind of applied a standard 10-year methodology here. So the benefits are much greater than the costs here. The costs here are not going to be anywhere close to the benefits. For Orange County, the benefits are merely in the hundreds of millions, 185 million without a discount rate, 154 with a 3% discount rate, 77 with a 7% discount rate. So the benefits here are far greater than the cost. I also performed a sensitivity analysis, which is going to be available in the appendix. So what if you change the turnover rate? What if you change the erosion rate, et cetera, et cetera? What I found was that our results are pretty robust. That means you're going to get different results with different assumptions, but you can justify this project fairly easily, even given very conservative assumptions. I used the assumptions that I thought were most reasonable, but even if you make those assumptions more conservative with a small c, you will find that this project really pans out. I've been doing this for 30 plus years. I don't think I've ever seen a project with benefits relative to costs that are as high as this one, frankly. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Dr. King, for being very concise with very important information. Yes.
Tough act to follow. I'm Dave Shug. I'll talk about where we will find the sand for the project. So this is an overview map of the potential offshore borrow areas, where we've been in the past, where we may go to look for sand again. We've been clear down to Imperial Beach, and we've been off Zuniga Jetty. We're looking to expand some of the known borrow areas done for RBSP2 at Del Mar and at Mission Beach. And the message is there's substantial amounts of material there still in place. And we're also proposing to re-explore some of the other known borrow sites, say at Torrey Pines. We'll look at moving the borrow site closer to shore. We'll go back to San Alejo. It was heavily used. There still may be material there. Encinitas, same, off Bataquitos Lagoon. It was heavily used before. We're going to look and try and broaden and reuse those areas. Santa Margarita River, this is north of the harbor. There's a substantial volume of sand. It's been deemed too fine in the past. We want to go back and look at that again. We'll look at some new areas, potentially at Camp Pendleton, the south part of Camp Pendleton, and then clear up to Newport Beach and Huntington Beach. So we'll look at Del Mar, and then we'll look at Mission Beach, what the conditions are there, and where we propose to expand those areas. So this is a map of the Del Mar borrow area. You see the shoreline, you see the racetrack. You're looking below water, everything offshore. Everything yellow is sand or sediment. The RBSP2 borrow area is that colorful box outlined in blue. And that's the multi-beam sonar showing the bottom conditions and where it was deepened the most for RBSP2. RBSP1, the former borrow area, was simply in deeper water. So we were able to move the borrow area closer to shore, closer to the closure depth. It's about the 10 or 30, about the 10 meter depth contour there. And that was a big lesson learned from RBSP1. We did not have good closure depth information at that time. And the closure depth is just simply we can take sand from that depth without robbing it from the littoral zone. RBSP1 was simply too fine, and there was a cover of silt and fine material. We moved the borrow shoreward, and there was almost a complete absence of silt and sand at the seabed. The material is coarse, medium sand. All those vibrocores, all those dots are vibrocores. Vibrocores are the sediment sampling tool of choice. It's a pipe, 4-inch diameter pipe. We lower down to the seabed, and it vibrates down and takes a sample down to 10 or 20 feet. And we recover that, and we can We can look at the materials and know what to expect. There's a number of good vibrocores in the northern area there. We think we can expand the borrow area to the north. That's about 70 acres. If we take that down 20 feet, we might expect another 2 million yards. There's probably at least 2 million yards left in place in the RBSP2 area. After RBSP2, after the cores dredging, if that area still continued to being taken down 20 feet, we could have still 2 million yards remaining in that trapezoidal area there. The core, we have their as-builts from Ensenada Solana Beach. When they finished, they deepened. The deepest part of the borrow area went down about 10 feet below the seabed. So we're also looking to expand the potential borrow area to the west and to the south. And the constraints here are bedrock. That's those green areas there. It's bedrock. That's the Eocene rock at the seabed. Same problem in the north. So we can only expand it north-south so far. But again, if this deems feasible, there's another 2 or 4 million yards of material in an expanded borrow area here in Del Mar. Next, we'll go to Mission Beach. There's the shoreline, the roller coaster. We're a little further offshore here. We're more than a mile offshore. Some of the geologic constraints off Mission Beach are bedrock, those blue and purple areas. There's a number of shipwrecks. We have wreckage from the Mission Bay, the old Mission Bay Bridge was used out there as habitat. There's the Yukon further out there. The RBSP1 borrow area, you can see that was moved shoreward for RBSP2. It has not been dredged since then. You can see that the red is that's just showing those are the dredge tracks. Has not been dredged yet. Has not been dredged since RBSP2. There's perhaps almost 3 million yards left in place if that's taken down to its 20-foot depth. We're proposing to expand the borrow to the south. There's a number of favorable vibrocores that are telling us we should expect similar materials that's been dredged in the past. It may be feasible to expand it to the north. A similar geologic environment. So we'll be recommending vibrocores, perhaps in some areas marine geophysics to check for bedrock. In an area like this, we have some unusual things. We have an unknown bottom feature there in that potential southern expansion area. So we may recommend sending out a submersible ROV to confirm what the heck that is. It's a 50 feet long and it has a very strong magnetic signature. So that's it. That's what we're going to, we're proposing. We're working on a plan to reinvestigate these areas, reinvestigate areas in North County and look northward into Orange County.
All right, thank you very much. Next.
Sorry, I was just going to wrap up really quickly. So from here, where do we go? We're essentially here. We'll be taking feedback from you today and continued feedback from the stakeholders. We're going to continue to incorporate the Dana Point and the San Clemente information as we have more coordination with them, and we'll be refining our initial concepts, identifying information gaps. Chris and Greg have kind of alluded to some of those today. And for the offshore borrow sites, there are clearly quite a few. And then we expect the draft feasibility study to be available in winter this year. So that's, if you have any questions, we're more than happy to take them.
Thank you to the whole team. And please stand by. We'll see if we have some questions. We're going to try to get everybody out of here as close as possible to on time. So let's see. Tessa, first, do we have any public comment on this item?
I have 2 in-person public commenters. Susie Whitelaw, please come to the podium.
Okay. Hi, I'm Dr. Susie Whitelaw with Save Our Beaches San Clemente. And first of all, I'd really like to thank everybody at SANDAG. We are so incredibly grateful to be included in your program, and I hope you will probably hear a lot from me. If you don't know me, I am a geologist. My PhD is in marine sedimentology, and been working for several years now with San Clemente's beaches, which are in serious trouble. I really appreciate all the really hard work that's gone into this, and my main comment is to make a stand for the State Beach project. In San Clemente, we have, starting from kind of the north to the south, we have city-owned beaches, and then we have the San Clemente State Beach, and then we have a former privately owned beach where Cypress Shores, where the OCTA Transportation Authority has put out 50 to 70 feet of riprap, completely covering that beach or a large portion of that beach. The slides that say State Beach there are actually half of or a portion of the south part of City Beach and the north part of State Beach. And it ends at Calafia Beach parking lot, which is a huge parking lot. And it doesn't cover the south part of the San Clemente State Beach, which is this beautiful campground up on the bluff. It's got hundreds of campsites that are almost always completely filled with people, and then a pedestrian underpass that goes down to that beach. Now, the sand is only going to be placed or proposed to be placed on the north end of State Beach. And you might think, well, that's just going to go down to the south end. And what's the problem? The problem is, as people from Scripps have shown, we have cells with subcells within the Oceanside littoral cell. And in this case right there, the sand actually goes, and longshore drift goes from south up north. And so San Mateo Creek on the other side of the private beach would normally be a source of sediment for that. But the riprap that's been placed by OCTA there blocks that sediment source. And so it leaves about 2/3 a mile of this beautiful State Beach without a good sand source. And I would like to make a case, instead of putting 150 feet width of sand just on the north side of State Beach, if we could put 75 feet and extend it all across State Beach. And then that will go back up towards the rest of the city and the rest of the beaches. It's also in terrible, dire straits because State Beach is exactly where OCTA has been proposing to extend their revetment and put 50 feet of rock over that beach, where there's only 50 feet of dry sand left. And so if we really, I've been promising them that this program would put sand on the beach and they wouldn't have to put the rocks out there. And so I'm just kind of making a case for that lovely bit of State Beach there.
Your time expired.
Thank you very much for your comments, and we appreciate the collaboration between San Diego County and this part of the littoral cell that's in Orange County, and we're very glad you came down here. Do we have any other public speakers?
Final commenter, Catherine Rhodes, please come to the podium.
Hi, Catherine Rhodes, and this is actually kind of personal for me. This is the Tourmaline State Beach receiver site right here. And so myself, I live right here at Diamond Street, right here between Diamond and Emerald. And the berm is going to stop on Diamond Street. And so what happened, and for me, I thought that you guys have put sand here before because, you know, the city of San Diego, they actually make berms in the same exact area that you're talking about. They've made those berms before, but those are just city people. And I've been going to the city people and complaining and requesting that they go, instead of stopping on Diamond Street, you stop at the pier. And the reason for that is when you have, let's say you're arming the coast or something, this is kind of a little bit of an armament. It changes something different. Right when you stop the wall or the berm, it usually makes a little carve in a little bit and creates actually more erosion right where you stop. You know, this is just a normal sand processing thing. And so what happens is the stairs right there are all eroded out. There's this big, huge gap of erosion right underneath the stairs at the bottom of Diamond Street. And then right next to there's showers. And there's been this big, huge landslide where we've had problems with water from the grass creating a landslide because there's breaks in the drain, in the water. And so you could actually see the water, darker coming up high. So what I'm requesting you do, and then also, all the people who eat up over there by Konos, over there by the pier, the water comes up and slams these areas so hard compared to these areas. So this area, and then on the other side of the pier is where there's a concrete wall. So that's armored also. So my recommendation to you guys, or my request to you guys, is to actually have the berm go all the way from Diamond Street all the way down to the pier here. And then, of course, I just looked up the SANDAG jetty. I believe it was the 1890s when they did that. And, my plan is 100% exactly what they did, where I think that when they do your, let's say when you guys do your airport connectivity project, you take out all the junky dredge sand that you had there and take it and use it as beach sand replenishment. So my big, huge, and the whole entire thing is that you guys don't think that the sand in Mission Bay is good for anything, for concrete, for anything. We get our sand and gravel from Canada by barge. SANDAG pays for sand and gravel for our construction from barge. When we have all the sand.
When your time expired.
Thank you. Any other speakers, Tessa?
And that concludes the public comments.
Okay, I have some bad news and or good news, depending on your perspective. I've been advised this meeting is actually scheduled to go to 1:30, so we don't have to end at 1 o'clock. I'd like to try to end it by 1:15, so you can all get on your way. But this is the chance for questions, comments, and us to have a discussion about this topic. Yes, Joy.
Thank you, Chair Warden. I want to make a statement and then ask a question. I want to make sure that I'm on the record to say I appreciate and support the locations identified in my city, the city of Encinitas. And I also appreciate the data and the logic used and how it was presented today, being an alternate today. Without the background on this working group, I totally feel like I understood what you were saying, so I appreciate that. There is one thing I have a question about, though, and I'm trying to characterize how you're going to move forward. When you were talking about this project, and you kind of mentioned this project many times, and Mr. King with his economic analysis said this project, is this project represented by the sites you've identified today in this presentation to us? I'm just trying to is that what this project is, and is that what's going to move forward? Or are there some milestones that come up where we assess what this project is? And I see Keith coming up to answer that question. Thank you.
Well, that's a great question. So 2 years ago, when we started talking about a next regional beach sand project, we talked about the necessary 3 steps. So there's a planning and feasibility phase, which this project's in. You do that to say, do you have a feasible project out there? What actually is that project? And is it economically efficient? And you have a cost-benefit ratio greater than 1. That's what this team is doing right now. They're going through that planning phase to show what a project could look like, getting your feedback on that project right now. There'll be a draft report coming out later on this winter, which will have more opportunity to provide feedback. And it'll end with having a feasibility study and economic analysis. That's saying that the region, including our folks from Orange County, would like to move forward with a larger nourishment project, a regional beach sand 3. We then have to go to steps 2 and 3, which is to get funding for environmental construction and monitoring, and ultimately build the project. So what you're seeing right now is the first discussions with your staff of what we think a project could look like. It's up for discussion, input, monitoring, change. That's what this process is about, both today and as the draft report comes out. So that's where we are, and then ultimately try and get funding for whatever we come up with as part of this project.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that explanation. It will evolve, and our input to you as the process evolves is very important. So I've given my input today. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Yes, Joe.
Thank you, Dwight. Thank you for the report and how comprehensive it is. Just a couple of quick comments, recognizing the time constraints. One, do want to emphasize the support for the tourmaline section that has not had sand in the past. We also recognize that there may be some other constraints that may limit that, but we definitely would like to see that continue in the planning phase to make sure, given the conditions that we see out there as well. A quick question, well, not a quick, I'm not make a quick question. I don't think it's a quick answer, but in terms of what you're talking about, in terms of the beach width and the volumes you're talking about, where does sea level rise come into that conversation?
Well, this specific project that we discussed today is anticipated to occur in the near-term future, the very near-term future, meaning it's like, the next 5 years or less. So sea level rise really doesn't factor into it too much in the next few years. What we look at for a program where maybe over the next 50 years, we want to nourish the beaches, that's when we start to understand, okay, there's going to be higher water levels and there's going to be narrower beaches. So we need to compensate for that. And basically what it means is you compensate by increasing the volumes of sand, maybe increasing the lengths of the beach fills and making the projects larger over time so the beach can adjust its position laterally and vertically with regards to as water levels rise.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. There's not enough time to get in the soapbox to talk about resiliency and protecting not only the width of the beach and how important that is, but the infrastructure that is adjacent to those beaches. Did you want to add something?
This is a resilience action. This is a proactive action to increase the resilience of the shorelines along San Diego County.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then I'll close with a comment that the chair made earlier, recognizing the impact that these beach replenishments can have on the mouths of the lagoons. I'm particular focusing on Penasquitos and San Dieguito, but want to make sure that when we talk about financing, that we create some sort of endowment so that when we have the inevitability of the sand moving and risking those lagoons, that we have a funding source and don't have to rely on underfunded nonprofits or JPAs to try to figure out how to tackle those. So that's just a future consideration from a funding source. So again, thank you for the very good work. Thank you to everybody at SANDAG that helps put this together. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Joe. Other comments or questions? Yes, Dr. Flick.
A quick comment for Chris. I don't know how you keep all those numbers at the tip of your tongue like that. That is stunning. And a question for Dave. As far as the borrow sites are concerned, as this is from ignorance, is there any monitoring or has there been any results about how quickly these or whether they actually fill back in again, those 20-foot holes?
There has been monitoring. I'll let either Chris or Greg Herron address that. Yes, there has been monitoring.
Borrow sites.
So for the regional beach sand 2 borrow sites, there was a comprehensive multi-beam survey done just after they were mined. And then part of SANDAG's monitoring conditions were to do a less extensive single beam surveys, basically across the 2 main axes. And that was done up until 2018. So that was the last time.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me to be an important part to make sure what you say about not affecting the beach by going closer to shore to borrow, actually is true. I'm not doubting that it is. I'm just saying that it's important to verify that, I think, going forward, so you don't undermine the base of the beach you're trying to nourish.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Yes, go ahead.
I just have a quick comment. I noticed Camp Pendleton was identified as a new potential borrow site. I don't know if any coordination is necessary with the Marine Corps, but if it is, I can help put you in contact with those folks.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? If not, I have a couple of quick questions. One, did you take into account the Army Corps program, which, as I understand it, they put a bunch of sand on Encinitas and Luqadda and in Solana Beach, and it's intended to go every 5 or 10 years for 50 years, although I think the later phases aren't yet funded. So these volumes that you're giving us, are they assuming there will be that project or that there won't be?
Both. That's one of the complexities with this this effort, right? And making it a programmatic, longer term effort. And so we have some different situations that we'll be looking at within Encinitas and Solana Beach in particular, as well as San Clemente we mentioned. And so that's a little bit of what's behind some of the flexibility that we've identified in some of those different sites. It not only depends on whether, what the renourishment cycles look like for those core projects, ultimately, whether they get funded, how big it is, that kind of thing, but also to some extent what the monitoring results show in some areas in particular where there are larger volumes that have been placed in the past. So that we want to make sure that we're not overbuilding something if monitoring does show that there is an impact, but that we're allowing for that flexibility to come in and supplement renourishment or take the place of renourishment as, kind of following what Greg is finding with the profile data.
All right, thank you for that. It's complicated, but we'll deal with it. A couple of other quick questions for whomever can answer them. You didn't mention grain size in the borrow sites. Is it the good stuff that we're looking at in all these borrow sites?
We think so. Some of the SANDAG vibrochores are showing about the same grain size that's been used in the past. So that's a good sign. But just the density of vibrochores isn't enough to really confidently assess that. But like, for example, at Mission Beach, the average grain size of that expanded borrow area, it's still about 0.5, 0.6, which is good. That's what we're looking for. This remarkably low fines content. So it looks like a beautiful deposit. Same at Del Mar. We're going to test where we see vibrochores that we have in that northern expansion area. Seeing about the same, seeing about the grain size medium D50 about 0.5, 0.6, which is good. Low fines. Same constraint is just sort of sparse vibrochore coverage, which is why we would recommend doing more. So the short answer is we hope so. So far, so good. It's a uniform geologic environment, which is good.
Great, that's good news. Another related question, we talked about the needs that Chris presented and then the volumes. Do they match? Are we confident there's enough sand out there to do everything we want? Army Corps, everything?
Yes.
All right, I appreciate the concise. I don't need the details. Just want to make sure there's enough. The final question I have, or a comment really, is for Dr. King. And I think in a way what he presented may be the most important information. And it was a bit not obtuse or obscure, but to me, so I assume it is to the public. And as I get it, you have studied what is the value to a person being able to spend time on the beach and extrapolated that into what the value is to the community versus the cost. I would be very interested if you could put together a simple one sheet, like the elevator talk for those of us. What I hear all the time is, what, you're going to want to spend $30 million and put sand on the beach? It just washes away. What a waste of money. And I'd love to have them read your report, Dr. King, but I don't think that would resonate with a lot of people. So is that something you'd be comfortable to do, a one-page sheet?
I've been
for
doing
us?
elevator pitches this week for some reason. This seems to be the elevator pitch week. So I'll try to come up with an elevator pitch for the SANDAG project. I think you're exactly right. No one's going to read this 30-page appendix that I wrote. Even Ron Flick's not going to read it. So, so we need an elevator pitch for it. I agree.
Great. Thank you for that. And it's quite stunning to see that the cost benefit ratio is so dramatically on the benefit side for doing this. It's just a matter of helping people understand why that is so and that it isn't voodoo science. All right, last chance.
I don't promise it's not voodoo science, but it is legitimate science. And it's the science that is used. So I will explain the
well
voodoo.
done, voodoo science. Okay, any final comments, questions from anybody? If not, I think, Courtney, unless we need to do something else, are we ready to wrap it up? All right, thank you all for coming. I just want to end by saying it's been a great pleasure for me to serve on this committee for the last 10 years and to chair it. And don't be surprised if you see me down here as a member of the public. And I've enjoyed working with all of you. With that, we are adjourned.
Bye.